Hey everyone, and welcome to the Therapeutic Podcast. As the name suggests, this podcast is everything about therapy and mental health, which is hosted by two counseling psychologists who have a lot to say and who would otherwise just sit beside a fireside and talk about it. So instead, here we are. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Therapeutic Podcast. I am your host, Meenal, and I have with me my co host, Zainab. And today's topic is something that is very personal to us, very personal to our generation, I think, quarter life crisis. So, if you are someone who is in their early 20s, late 20s, or early 30s, or if you feel like you are in that crisis mode, I think this episode is for you. This episode is going to be majorly more of us sharing our own experiences, our personal experiences of having presently dealing with the quarter life crisis. So I don't think we're going to be talking as psychologists here. And I am also a little bit conflicted about the word quarter life crisis, right? Like, I don't know why have we come upon the word crisis, because I understand that this is like a transition from, when we go from one of our bubbly phases of being in college and dreaming about life and whatever the life that is ahead of us. We dream a lot about it, we imagine a lot of things, and then we come in phase with the reality, right? Like what exactly the world is like, all the responsibilities that we are going to be taking upon without realizing the weight of the responsibility that we are actually taking upon. So it's a transition. It's almost like adult puberty, the starting phase of it. So crisis feels a little offensive to me. What do you think, Zainab?
I think the reason it's called a crisis is because, like our teenage years, like you mentioned, that this is adult puberty, like in our puberty period, right now also we're confused about the reality that our life is supposed to be. So when you're a teenager, we fantasize our life. No, we're going to grow up. We're going to go in our 20s. We're going to work. We're going to earn money, go party, and then come back and go to work the next day. But when we're actually an adult, we realize that it's not possible. That it's not easy to earn the money, and if you're earning that kind of money, you have to sustain. So you have other things to take care of with that same money that you're earning, right? So maybe that's why it's a crisis, because everybody seems to be doing everything, yet nobody's happy. So it
Exactly.
is a crisis.
Yeah, I think I agree. And the last thing that you said, right? Like it's everybody's trying to do everything, and this age seems to be that phase. Like everybody tells us that this is the age where you have a chance to work on your career, and you also want to have your lifetime of 20s that you will remember. 20s is the time when you're most energetic. You want to have fun. You want to try new things, and at the same time, you're also trying to make a life which is gonna help you be more stable afterwards. So it's a conflict of a lot of things कि आपको stable भी होना है, and yet you want to have fun, and yet there are responsibilities, but you also want to be free, and you want a stable job, but you want to try new things also.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess I understand where the crisis is coming from, because it's forming in my head right now.
The issue is that no matter what we do, we're always going to have regrets. Like if we choose family, then we're going to have problems. Ki, Acha, I want to stay away from my family, but once you're away from family, you realize that that's a really tough job. So you want to come back. But the minute you come back, you realize why you actually moved away. So the same thing happens even with your romantic relationships, where everybody around you is like,
Yes.
okay, now maybe you should find somebody for yourself. While you look at other people having 2 or 3 kids and you're struggling to even put yourself out there. So
Hmm.
it's a crisis in a crisis.
So yeah, I think we have established it's the rightly put term. Quarter life crisis is the right way to go.
Yes.
But it feels weird to be in this age, like you just mentioned that there are some people, like you are floating. It seems like you're floating in the same waters as because you're of the same age, or at least in the same age range. But yet there are some people who are, actually doing the adult stuff, quote unquote adult stuff. Like they're getting married, they're having kids, they're getting into businesses or getting a job, or maybe choosing an apparently completely different path of how they want to live their life, and they've actually figured out what they want to do with their life. And then there are some people who are still studying, and who are still trying to figure out if they want to live away from their parents, they want to live with them, or managing the how your relationship is going to be with your family, because that itself is a transition that comes with your adult puberty, so to say. There is no fixed way of saying that what exactly is going to happen with you when you are in your
Yeah.
20s, because everybody's doing their own stuff, everybody's doing different things. And you look at one of your friends, and you're shocked ki acha you are doing that now. So and one of their friends, they are still studying, and acha you've not completed your studies, okay. So you want to be, it's a little difficult to adjust with everything that is happening
Yeah.
around you.
See, like to expand on the example that you gave that we're all in the same waters. We are in the same waters, but the only difference is that we're using different vessels, right? Somebody's in a
Hmm.
cruise, while somebody's in like a lifeboat, and somebody's just on like a log trying to survive, right? So there are so many other things also. This actually basically means that the kind of security or the kind of privilege also that you bring with your families, right? When you enter your 20s, some people have to work because they do not have that kind of financial support. Your parents could only help you till your education. After that, you have to
Hmm.
take care of yourself and maybe even of your parents and family. While some people are just left ki theek hai, my family does not need me, my family does not need my money, so the
Hmm.
entire money that I'm earning is only for me, I can do whatever, while they're also being supported by their parents and probably helping them pay their rents or whatever little amount that they need, right? So
Right.
like you said, we're all in the same water, but the tools or the vessels that we're in is fully different, and that's what makes our crisis even more difficult because it feels like, oh, we started together. How did we end up like this?
So different, right? It really
Yeah,
makes sense. It's a wonderful example. And I think there are two extremes that we're talking about here. Like you mentioned, right? There are some people who immediately after their college they know that they have to start taking a bigger responsibilities of taking care of their whole family, and even take upon their businesses financially, mentally, physically, like all of those things coming upon or on themselves. And then there are some people who do have that privilege of living off their own money and not having to support their family or others. Nobody's depending on them.
yeah,
But then I've for them, I also feel like when you're at that stage, or at least that's what happened with me. Like I did not have any dependables on me, and always had this thing in my mind. Half 11th, or like when I was beginning to go to 12th standard, I went to this career guide counselor, right? Like that was the phase when we were starting to go to counselors, and so
yeah.
my mother took me to a career counselor, and she asked me this questions like, what do you aspire to become? Like, what do you want to become? And at that time, I had not started doing psychology yet. And genuinely, I had no idea of the profession or the line or the stream that I was going to choose, like science, commerce, arts, whatever. But I had this clear idea of what I wanted from my life, which was financial stability. That was the only thing that I could think of. Like, whatever job I do, or all I want is that I achieve financial stability in, and that also in a very like a, मतलब at that time जितना भी दिमाग था मेरे पास में, my goal was to कि इतना बस हो जिसमें I earn my own money, I have my own place, and I live off what I earn. Cut to what I am right now. At least a few months back, what I was. So I was earning off my own money. I was living in a place that I rented out. I had good flatmates around. So I had almost reached to the place where I thought of reaching back then. And you can say that I like maybe I'm not feeling a lot of gratitude towards it, but that's what it felt like at that time. That I was a little disappointed because there was this gap, the feeling that I thought I would feel back then when I was in 12th standard to achieve all of these things. How would it feel? And when it was achieved, how it actually felt. So that gap was a bit of disappointment that I think
Yeah,
comes facing the reality of
exactly. I think
ab
that's
kya.
also been
Yeah, yeah.
easily in the beginning, also, like we mentioned, that quarter life crisis actually happens when we face the reality that our life is not actually what we thought it would be, right? Like in your case, like you mentioned, which also I think makes me think that our entire life we're living in the future. like you said, that you wanted to just be
Yeah.
financially stable. You were only thinking of the future. You didn't think in the
Mm.
present, maybe this is what interests me and I would enjoy doing this at this point in time. So a lot of times our quarter life crisis also comes from the fact that we're very focused on future mein what is going to help us. Is this going to make me financially stable? Will I be able to travel with this kind of money? Will
Yeah.
I find somebody, a romantic partner or like an intimate relationship with the kind of money that I'm earning right now? All
Mm.
of those things matter, right? So again, like you mentioned, I think you know that I also went through a phase where I moved out of my house. My
Yeah.
first job, I was living in a, you were with me, we were in the same job. The only difference was
Yeah.
that I had rented out a flat. I was living all alone, doing everything on my own. And in my head, while I was in that moment, I didn't appreciate it enough. That was my lifelong dream. I think I remember watching Wake Up Sid, and Aisha actually moves to
Oh,
Mumbai,
yes. Yeah.
takes her own
I
flat and
think
she's decorating. Yeah.
you had a similar flat like hers. Like,
Yes.
I think I remember. Yeah.
A very tiny, cozy room, and it was all mine. I had no roommates, I had nothing. I had to help myself, do everything. And I thought life would be like that. But the minute I started working, the minute I moved out of home, I realized how difficult it is. And only when it was time for me to say goodbye to that life and move to a new job, and you move to a new city again, is when I thought ki I never appreciated at that point ki I was actually living
Mm.
my dream. So
Exactly.
that also can upset you. That also can cause, feelings that you don't want to feel ki acha, why didn't I appreciate it, why didn't I make the most of it? But at that moment I was always exhausted ki nahi nahi,
Yeah.
ghar jana hai, I have to cook for myself, I have to wash my clothes, I have to clean the house, I have to do this, I have to do that. All of those tensions ki I forgot ki I can just go out. I'm living alone. I don't need anybody's permission to, go outside. I
Yeah.
can step out at any time of the hour, but I still chose to not do that. So
Yet I had to be the one waiting for you to come out so that we can hang out.
yes. Well,
I think I understand this completely, right? As I was thinking about this episode, also, this question came into my mind: like, why was it difficult for us to feel gratitude towards the situation that we were actually in? And as you said, right, like it was exhausting. It was exhausting first to realize कि ऐसा feel नहीं होता है, and that the achievement that you actually wanted to achieve comes with a sense of gain and a sense of regularity that you have to maintain in your life, which you did not take into consideration at all.
yeah.
So you really do have to be in line with that. And when until you can do that, I don't think the graduation would genuinely come from inside. नहीं आता यार वो चीज I think for me it's difficult to feel that, and I do feel bad that I was not able to appreciate it. I mean, I did appreciate. I was living the life that I wanted, and it was a lot of fun also with it. I mean, with all the responsibilities and everything, but still, it was difficult for me to feel that gratitude, to be in that present moment, because it was exhausting. A lot of energy of ours was going into just surviving the day, and still thinking about ki, "Acha, is this it, or is there more? What is there more to it? Ki,
Yeah.
this entire life is in front of you, and how do you want to live it? क्या करना है अब आगे?" I'm not sure if our listeners are resonating with it, or it's just us going through the quarter life crisis.
No, I think everybody goes through this for sure.
Right. I was also reading this paper that was based on quarter life crisis, and because there's not a lot of research done upon this
Hmm.
topic, because it's fairly new term, but it is like it has existed. Matlab the feeling has been existing since a long time. People have given a term to it, and I think this is the most relatable English word that I have found for myself, at least for this phase. And there was this few researchers who named this as emerging adulthood, right? And they came up with four phases that people usually go through. First of it being feeling somewhere like an adult, but not fully. So, it's like a forced adulthood that comes with it, with you growing up and all the responsibilities, you realizing ki, acha, I thought that I was gonna live an independent life and that money was gonna just come by and we were gonna have friends around us and like the whole Friends vibe and the Karan Johar
Yeah.
movie vibe. I'm gonna blame Karan Johar for a lot of things for ruining my adulthood, seriously. Yeah, so first phase is definitely that. Feeling like half adults.
Yeah. Because I think also, like you said, na, ki we don't realize that we're in it, and then you have to just survive, just
Hmm.
literally survive. So again, this actually takes me back to when we started our first jobs. When we got the money, the two of us did so much research about how to invest money, how to save. Like a
Yes.
portion of our time was actually spent on that because we took this pressure on ourselves. Because
Yeah.
everywhere at that point of time, people were talking about, Acha, now that you've started earning, start investing, do this with the money, do that with the money. And we didn't
Yeah.
know anything about it. So our major concern was, Acha, so we are earning, we should do something. Because again, we were trying to think of our future. कि future में ये पैसे काम आएंगे, so we need to start earning, saving and investing and this stock and that stock and do this and do that. So it's just because when, like they said, you're getting into adulthood, you're already an adult, but the thing is that there's just too much information thrown at you. You
Yeah.
have to suddenly have to have like a partner. You have to have good set of friends that are
Hmm.
proper friends that will stick by you, that stand by you through anything. You need to have a good income. You probably need to, have good assets.
Hmm.
You need to be able to help yourself in case of an emergency. And there's
Hmm.
just so much that's there, but there's no information on how do you get there.
Yeah,
Like if
definitely.
you have to have a love life, you have to put yourself out there.
Yeah.
How do you put
How do you
yourself
do
out
that?
there? Yeah, how do you do that? If you need a job, you need to let other people know that you need a job. So
Hmm.
it's, I think adulthood is also constantly trying to, let other people know that you're in this world, you're existing,
Hmm.
and let them acknowledge you and let them give you opportunities. But just the entire point of putting yourself out there and letting other people know, because even during this time we're still struggling to find out who we really are, what our
Yeah.
interests are. But then at the
Yeah.
same time you have to let other people be very convincing and letting other people know, okay, actually, see, this is who I am. So, I'm going to be a good like investment. So invest in me.
Hmm.
I can be a good partner. I can be like a good employee. I can be a good this. I can be a good that. So that is also very confusing. And I think that's why also a lot of adults in their 20s struggle,
Hmm.
because it's a constant phase of putting yourself out there, which is very exhausting and difficult.
It's definitely overwhelming. Like you have to suddenly make a brand out of yourself. And even when you haven't figured out yourself who you are, you have to present it out to others. Ki, okay, this is
Yeah.
who I am. So this it's almost like you're putting out a pretentious self of yours, which which again is exhausting for because you need to actually be able to put up with the pretentious self. कि
Yeah.
भाई अभी ये बता दिया है कि तुम तो ये हो, तो अब बनना भी पड़ेगा.
Yeah. And I think that's why a lot of people talk about how Instagram gives you like fake this thing that acha theek hai, this is how people's lives should be. I think people need to also talk about how bad LinkedIn is. I think LinkedIn gives me more anxiety than Instagram does.
Yes,
There's
yes.
constantly like people talking about their achievements. I have done this, I have done this course, and I spoke to a bunch of people, and this happened, and I've moved forward in life. And are you really moving forward in life? Like, it is a great. I've stopped like opening up my
I
LinkedIn because I
know.
can't.
Yeah.
It's just too much information to take in, and I think Instagram is a lot better than LinkedIn.
Is it?
Yes, for
I
sure.
mean, I mean,
At
how
least
do you
with
mean?
Instagram, you know कि अच्छा ठीक है, this is fake whatever.
अच्छा.
So many people tell you na कि अच्छा see, this doesn't happen in real life. We're just putting out
Yeah.
like good stuff,
Yeah.
but nobody tells you about that LinkedIn, no, because then your job depends on it. So you can't tell people that this is all fake, or this is just
At least
painting
like
it
in
with like a brighter color to let other people know how
yeah.
nice and shiny it is.
Mm. Definitely. LinkedIn scares me still. Like it's a place where you don't want to engage in, but yet you cannot get yourself
Ignore it.
away from it. Yeah, you
Yeah,
cannot ignore it.
yeah,
And especially this was happening during the COVID time when we were actually just studying. Like we were in our masters, we hadn't even started doing any kind of job, and yet I used to feel this constant pressure of doing something every day. Like there has to be something that I could look forward to, otherwise the whole day was gonna go, like I don't know how
Yeah.
the whole day was gonna go. It was and then when you open LinkedIn in that phases, because you know that you have to look for something that you have to do, look for internships or workshops or whatever you want to do, and you have to open LinkedIn for that, and then there are people putting out, "Ki, even doing code, I'm doing this and that," and I'm like,
Yeah.
can you guys stop? Like, can you just, the whole world has come to stop, can you also stop for a minute? It's
That's
definitely
when it
exhausting.
makes you like appreciate the coffee trend or whatever dance trends, because at least that was
Oh
just
yeah.
time pass, no? But this is
Yeah.
people actually moving forward in life, and you're
Hmm.
literally stuck there in one room on your laptop trying to figure out how do I move forward. So I'd rather do a dance challenge than log into LinkedIn and feel bad about myself.
I really feel, I mean, of course, this is something that we all should work through, that, attaching our self worth with the productivity or the kind of work that we do. It's hard to separate those, of course. Like, it, it's a part of your life that you actually have worked since your childhood, like your whole education and everything you put towards, and then you come to a place where you decide that this is what I want to do with your life. So, of course, this is a very big part of your life, but it's also a part of your life. So attaching your self worth with it, खुद के लिए ही ये चीज एक खराब करने वाली चीज हो जाती है. And I think I am also still like processing it and trying to maintain a boundary with my own self worth and my own career. But yeah, let's see where we go with it. Another thing that you said, right? The whole range of this like 20 to 30 seems like an urgent range. Like,
Yeah.
everything has to happen now. Yeah, I've at least I have always felt this कि ये end है. मतलब this is like
Yep.
the line, and I have to do a lot of things before I reach there, because otherwise after this I don't know what life is like. इसके आगे का सोचने की हिम्मत नहीं होती थी. Like I don't know what was going to happen after that.
Yeah.
So there is always this thing of everything happening now, and I don't know where was this coming from.
I think also because maybe we've not probably seen our parents in their 20s and 30s. We've seen them post 30, 35. At least from when we
Hmm.
could probably understand कि अच्छा ठीक है, our parents are that old. So we've seen them live sort of a stagnant life. He go
Hmm.
work, come back home, take care of the family. So somewhere I think we also know कि अच्छा after this age, once you have a family, your
Yeah.
life will become like that, no? So we don't know the
Hmm.
struggles they faced in their 20s and 30s. And
Hmm.
you will not know unless you have somebody extremely close to you living with you, going through those struggles every day. So maybe as children we've constantly thought कि अच्छा getting a job is a big deal, getting married is a big deal, having children is a big deal.
Hmm.
उसके बाद it'll just fall into place. You just have to go with it कि अच्छा ठीक है अभी
Hmm.
ये हो गया, तो then you can just live with it. Maybe that's why we don't think of इतना दूर, because we've not we've seen the same things happening with 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s. It's all the same. It actually is for like a major population also, it is the same, no?
Hmm.
Only
Yeah,
a
I think so.
selected few do live a life where they do different things constantly, but otherwise
Hmm.
it's the same for everyone. You're just trying to survive even during those 3 decades.
It's true, very true. Hmm. I don't think I ever saw it in this way. Like seeing my parents obviously must have played a big role in me not trying to
Yeah.
see what comes after that, because the responsibility that we were talking about, right? Like whole 20s में ये सब चीजें आएंगी आपके पास में. So you've actually seen your parents do that, and you know that it might come to you. तो इसीलिए आपको
Yeah.
individually आपको खुद के लिए जो चीज करनी है उसके लिए कम टाइम है आपके पास में. So you feel that urgency of doing a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Hmm. Right. So we were talking about the phases that these researchers came up with, right? Like, so first one was feeling like half adults, and second one was active exploration of self and world. So definitely, this is the age where we learn a lot about ourselves, how the world works, and what is our place in that huge
Yeah.
and very overwhelming world. Where do we stand? What do we want to do? All of these questions are very common, right? And uncertainty, I think, is the one word that is very much relatable with quarter life crisis. Like, everything is uncertain. even your own definition of yourself keeps changing after 6 months, right? At least with me, yeah.
Yeah.
Every other day, it was the belief that I used to hold for myself or the way I was going to design my life keeps changing every time. I used to think I want to be financially stable without having to think how I want to get there. And which is the more important thing, to think कि आपकी day to day life कैसी होनी चाहिए. Like I think that's what you mean when you say, right, like we have always lived in the future without thinking about
Yeah.
how the present is going to be.
Yeah.
So designing your present should, I think, be more of the thing that we should think about.
This actually, I think I made a small change in my life based on this, where, I also, like everybody else, live in the future. कि आगे जाके I will need this. I will have to not take leave right now because I might need these leaves in the future. Because of that, I think I made a really major, not a major, minor change which has made a major impact in my life, which is probably exercising. So,
Huh?
yoga, for example, I do yoga, and the only reason I do it is because it helps me with my day to day this thing. I'm not doing it thinking ki acha, maybe 10 years down the line I'm going to be flexible. I don't care about those things. For me, the point
Right.
is ki it helps me with regulating my body for that day. Like I do my yoga only after I'm done with the day. I'm done with work, I'm done with everything. And that's when I do yoga, knowing ki acha, now I'm going to feel calm. Right? So
Hmm.
maybe the way to navigate through all of this is also just finding a little thing that you do every day to help you just relax, to
Hmm.
regulate yourself, because otherwise you're just living, and then there comes a point when you have to put a stop and you realize ki, oh no, what now?
What now? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That that kind of a wall comes in front of you, and you see yourself just going back and forth, and there's
Mm.
no moving forward actually happening. Like you're experiencing a lot of things, because a lot of things happen in your 20s also. Like I think it's a very eventful age. I'm not trying to say that in your 30s and 40s it's not going to be. Of course it's going to be, but 20s are more eventful because first times ki jo cheeze hoti hai, like the things that you're facing for the first time happens a lot during this phase, which is why it's
Yes.
more eventful. And sometimes you realize that like while you're experiencing all of that, you're not really processing it properly. So you're just going it upar se, and you feel like you've lived through it, but it's not actually happening that
Yeah.
way. And definitely, I think yoga has been a huge part of my adult puberty too. Like it has definitely helped the way it helps us come back to the present, and at least for that 40 to 50 minutes or however long we do that, you can just be with yourself and actually not think about anything else, which helps a lot.
Yes. So actually, a lot of adults also that I speak with, like what by adults I mean people in their 20s, when I speak to them and they exercise, right? So they tell me that the only reason they do that is because that's the only part of the day where they're doing it only for themselves, right? I know that
Yeah,
when you're working, also you're working for yourself, but there's always like a motive. You're working because you need to pay the rent next month. You're working because you need to
exactly.
pay bills that way. Or, when you're talking to people, you're talking because you need to maintain that kind of relationship, otherwise you're not going to have any relationships. But when you're exercising or when you're doing anything for that matter, that little time, that 1 hour 45 minutes, is purely for yourself and for no one else. You're just
Hmm.
doing it because you want to, which in a way is also like a rebellion ki I am taking control of my life. Out of the
Hmm.
24 hours, this is the 1 hour that is mine. So, like, at
Exactly.
least for me, I get pretty upset when I don't get that 1 hour.
Yeah.
I get upset when
Yeah.
somebody tells me, ki, listen, don't go today, no, we have to go out, or, we'll do this. And I'm like, no, 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 that 1 hour is mine. So unless and until it's a proper emergency, don't ask me to miss it. We'll change our schedules accordingly, but this is something I have to do. So I think
Yeah.
when people form that habit, it's also because they're pretty stubborn, ki nahi, ye karna hi hai, because this is for me. And that's when
Hmm.
people in their 20s and 25s and get that in control, na, ki nahi, this is for me and I'm going to do it.
Definitely. And I think that's the irony, right? Like first of all, you've spoken like a true adult here. Like that 1 hour is gonna be mine. And
Yeah.
even if I have to skip hanging out with someone, I'm not gonna let you take this away from me. I really
Yes.
appreciate you for that. And I think you've been you've been the kind of person who actually appreciates that and has done that since a very long time. So that is something I've learned from you also. I was pointing out the irony of it. Like, we feel that once we get into the world of seeking a job or try earning money, and when we have that a little bit of financial kahin se aa raha hai, that money flow, the cash flow, we do feel like that there is going to be some aspects of our lives that we'll be able to control, right? Like, we're going to be living like we wanted to. Yet
Yeah.
after a point we come to realize that it's not at all close to it. Like, you're doing a job for a purpose, there is something that is pestering you to stay in it because you want to pay your
Yeah.
rent, or maybe you want to support your family, or just in general because you want to live, you have to do a job because you want financial stability. And even if you're in a relationship, I really hope that people somewhere, some people would be having that kind of relationship which does not have a reason to be with someone, right? Like, you're just there because you like the company, or you're just there because you love the
Yeah.
presence of the person. And I hope that there are people who do that. But if it's not, that's when the relationships also start to get a little bit of exhausting, and then there is this rupture in it, which is when we start to realize that jo control हम चाहते थे हमारी life में, it has actually come been given to the outside forces. If something is coming to us,
Yes.
and then we come and sit कि हाँ भाई ठीक है, yoga is something that is in my control, and this 1 hour nobody's gonna take it from me.
That way, actually, I have a friend that's very close to me who's uh working, who's earning. But when I look at that friend, I feel so happy and I actually admire that quality that the friend is only earning because that particular person enjoys traveling. And they
Hmm.
do travel, they travel so
Hmm.
much, and it's so nice to look at it because they are not controlled by a lot of other factors. I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of other things in that person's life, but the way the person has decided, ki nahi, I'm earning and I will travel because I have the time, I have the money, and I'm working hard. So I will put that
Hmm.
to use. So, like for me, probably there's yoga. For that person, there's travel. So,
Yeah.
in spite of a lot of different things happening in their life, they choose to use that money to, bring happiness in their lives, which I genuinely appreciate because it's not easy. It's never easy
It's
to
not
just,
easy.
you know, take a decision for yourself or be even a little selfish, which is a great
Hmm.
quality to have.
It is. It definitely. That is what helps you to be more selfless with others. Like, if you cannot be selfish with you, then I don't think you'll have the energy to give it to someone else. This was a circle that I also felt very much trapped inside, right? Like, the independence I was actually seeking was the independence of my own time, and the freedom of having to work from anywhere, work at the time that I want. Maybe it's too much to ask for, but that was the thing that I was actually looking forward to. And when it did not happen, and when I realized that this was, I used to think that people who actually do a job and earn money have that already. But
Yeah,
then when I realized that, it hit upon me pretty hard that, okay, this is not how it's supposed to be, or I do not want this. Like, how do I make a change in my life where I can make this happen? That I can be the actual controller of my own time and how I want to spend my day. So that was a very difficult cycle for me. And which
yeah,
is why, even though the jobs that I was doing were pretty good opportunities for me, I did feel a lot stuck there. And that makes me think about people who, I mean, I had the privilege of that I could quit my job and, like, maybe go back to home, or take a break for some time and still move on to do something else. But there are a lot of people who are actually stuck in their jobs because they do not have any other choice, which is,
yeah,
just thinking about that, makes me stuffy in my chest. Like, it's actually very frustrating.
it is. But I think also that's a choice that is forced upon you, but also you decide to keep that force on you. Ki, okay,
Hmm.
like that you might actually you have the liberty of maybe looking for another job, but you can't because you need that stability right now in your life. Not for yourself, maybe, but for somebody else that's dependent on you.
Yeah.
So, like it says, it makes you feel stuffy. I'm sure it also makes that other person feel stuffy, but at least there's a little thing na ki at least I'm helping or I'm doing something useful with it, so it's fine. Which most adults you hear them say, no, ki,
Yeah,
it
and
feeds
then
my
they,
family, so whatever.
I mean, it brings food on the table. But I think at the
Yeah,
same time, it's also, I mean, how long is that going to be? As you said, right? Like, yeah, there are some things that people might feel like I am doing a job for my family, but I also feel like कि ये कब तक चलेगा, the same feeling of uh, being fine with something because you're doing it for someone, because it brings food to your table. Because I've heard people, uh, I don't want to say regret, but there is a little bit of, grudge or a disappointment with your own self, not with people around you, but with your own self, that maybe उस time पे अगर थोड़ा सा risk लेके कर लेते तो it would have been different, or just ruminating about things what could have been. Maybe that's what
yeah.
leads to midlife crisis, I don't know.
But actually, this I think I resonate with a little because I don't know if we've spoken about this in private, but one of the major reasons why I even decided to go on a trip
Hmm.
was this. Like I didn't have any bitterness towards family or whatever. I was just upset ki I've been earning for maybe 2.5, 3 years now, and just the feeling ki I've not done anything with that money for myself. Like I'm just living the same mundane life कि ठीक है पैसे आ रहे हैं ये थोड़े पैसे इधर डाल दो थोड़े पैसे ये कर दो वो कर दो that's just happening but I've not done anything like and that's the reason why I also decided कि I'm going to go on a trip with my money that I've earned just
Yeah.
because I can so that that
Hmm.
bitterness doesn't eat me alive
Hmm.
which I think a lot of people do at one point they decide which is why I think a lot of solo trips also happen no
Probably, yeah.
that oh I'm going to find myself or I just need a break. For me it was more of taking a break and to just relax. But I
Hmm.
think for a lot of people these are the same lines to just escape the bitterness and to not to let the bitterness swallow you so that you don't blame anybody else. Like you had the
Yes,
choice. So
yeah. And I think that's a very healthy way of just accepting the bitterness of adulthood that comes
yeah.
with it. Like, yeah, you have been working hard and you've earned that money and you want to do something with it, and there's nothing wrong with it. So that's the more healthy way of accepting that than growing up and imagining कि अच्छा कुछ कर दिया होना चाहिए था उस time. So kudos to that. Kudos for you for taking time for yourself. And this is a very important message for our listeners, that taking time for yourself, that is why it's not selfish. I think it's more important for you and for the people around you that you do
And you do not need a lot of money for that. Please don't think you have to spend so much to go for a trip. It
that.
can just be the little things also. What matters is you take time for yourself. That's it.
Exactly. Just and that's also the, I mean, if we call the quarter life crisis to be bittersweet, that's the sweeter part of our 20s, right? Like we should be taking some time out for ourselves to figure out our own likes and
Yeah.
dislikes, to be learning to live with yourself before you can actually start to live with someone
Yeah.
else, so that
Exactly.
it can be easier for everyone. I can point out number of adults in my life right now also who I do wish that they would have gotten the time, or they would have taken out the time to do this for themselves, so that life could have been easier towards when they approach their midlife crisis, maybe.
Yeah. Which actually, oh my God, I have to mention this. It reminds me of Arjun from Zindagi No Milegi Dobara, where he's in his 20s or 30s and he's constantly
Oh,
living
yes.
ki I'm going to save
Ah,
money and then I'm going to retire and I will do this and I will do that. And then you meet a completely opposite character. I think her name was
yeah,
Zoya, where
yeah.
she's like नहीं नहीं ऐसे कैसे you have to live for the present which I think perfectly sums up our entire episode where we've said ki we need to also live in the present and not just in the future otherwise it will cause a crisis because then you're not truly happy what are
Yep,
you doing so much for if you're not using it anywhere
exactly. And as much as Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara romanticized the finding yourself thing, and I think that movie was a reason for a lot of people, starting to travel, trying to make the most of your money, and trying to make
yeah
the most of your time, and me trying to find myself. And I hope it worked for a lot of people, but it also does not take a lot of romanticizing your own life or money to be able to take some time for yourself.
Yeah.
And I think as my sweet friend Zainab here does, just be very resilient and strict about that 1 hour of yoga, even if you have to say no to a few things for that, and that's perfectly okay.
Yes.
We've covered a lot about how quarter life crisis affects our self identity, personal life, and career. And I think that in itself has been an overwhelming experience. And I think it was very interesting to talk about all of these things. But I think it's also good for us to take a pause here and and thank you very much everyone again for listening to another one of our episodes. And we will be talking about quarter life crisis in the perspective of society and family in our next episode. So stay tuned for part 2 and see you next time. Bye everyone.